This is maybe the biggest art book I've ever had. Look at this thing, it's huge. This is the Mark Schultz Complete Portfolio. I think there's several different portfolio books by Mark Schultz, and this book collects all of them. So it's just a ton of his work over the years. And in this video, we're going to be looking through this book and going through a lot of his preliminary to final process. Hey, what's up? My name is Thomas Patilli. Welcome back to my channel. This is gonna be a fun one. I ordered this Mark Schultz book recently from Flesk. Flesk Publications is a really great publisher that puts out some amazing art books. I've owned several over the years, and I just had to get my hands on this Mark Schultz collection. I believe this book came out last year, so it's still a new book. And whether you're a Mark Schultz fan or you're new to Mark Schultz, I think any artist, especially an artist who's interested in comic art and illustration, can get quite a bit out of looking through this book. And that's exactly what we're gonna do in this video. For me, art books are more than just a collection of all the final art of a particular artist, but I really like to see the behind the scenes stuff. I like to see the process stuff, and I know a lot of you do as well. And this book has quite a bit of that. And the way it's presented, I really like it because a lot of the preliminary art is side by side next to the finished art. And for an artist like myself and a lot of you, I think that's a really great way to just kind of study a particular artist, to understand their process and get inside their creative mind a little bit, just to see where they make adjustments, the evolution of a piece. And also in Mark Schultz's case, to see the versatility of an artist like he is, where he's able to create seemingly finished pieces of art with just pencil. He calls these preliminaries, I call them final drawings. But then he's able to render at a very high level with just pen and ink, and then make all these finished, amazing oil paintings as well. And throughout each iteration, his particular unique sense of creating a composition, rendering figures, it all shows through consistently, no matter what tool he's using. I'm mainly familiar with Mark Schultz's work, as I'm sure a lot of you are, from his comic Xenozoic. It's like an adventure, action, prehistoric fantasy comic that has all the visual elements of really great old newspaper strip comics, fantasy art, pinup art. In a lot of ways, it's sort of just one big homage to all of that stuff. He puts an incredible amount of care and detail into every panel. And for anyone out there who's interested in comic art, especially that with a retro kind of feel to it, I definitely recommend looking through Xenozoic Tales if you're not already familiar with it. And perhaps that can be a video in the future. I have a collection of that comic. Let me know in the comments if you would like to see me look through that book. But this book really focuses on a lot of the process behind that comic, as well as a bunch of his other illustration work. This is a new book for me. I just ordered it very recently and it arrived a few days ago. So it's been on my table and I've briefly just been looking at it the last couple nights in small sections. And Flesk did an amazing job putting this thing together. It really displays the artist's work in a way that is very easy to look through and flip through. And it does a really great job of showing all the different facets of Mark Schultz's work. So in this video, we're just gonna be flipping through this thing. As you can see, it is very, very big. There's a lot of pages here. I'm not gonna go page by page because the video would be really, really long. And I don't wanna give this away. I definitely recommend, if you're interested in what you see in this video, I recommend picking this book up. But I am gonna have an extended version of this video where I look through a lot more of this book than I'm gonna show on this video. And that's gonna be on my Patreon. I've been having a lot of fun on the Patreon recently. Some of you are on there. And I've been just showing off a lot of things that I'm not showing on other platforms, including extended versions of these videos, some behind the scenes process on some of the things that I'm working on currently. So if you would like to see that extended version of this video, where I go through quite a bit of this book, showing you a lot of this beautiful art with obviously my own commentary along with it. If you're interested in that, the link is in the description. There are different tiers that you can choose from on the Patreon. I appreciate it. Thanks so much. Hope to see you over there. All right, so there's a lot to get to in this book. Let's not waste any more time and let's dive into this Mark Schultz portfolio book. Here's a great example of the preliminary and the finals that are presented in this book side by side. It's really, really great to be able to compare the two. And throughout the book, he mentions that these penciled sketches are preliminaries, as he's calling them, and sometimes he's calling them studies. So I'm assuming that these are two separate drawings, rather than this was the penciled version that he scanned, and then this was the inked version that he inked on top of this. It seems to me, and I could be wrong, but it seems to me like he works a little bit more the way a traditional illustrator would work from Norman Rockwell or Austin Briggs days, where they would do these very, very detailed preliminary sketches that most of us, myself included, would be very, very happy to take as our final drawing. Like this one right here is indicated as a preliminary study, and then the finish is to the side. I really love being able to compare the two and see where he changed certain things, and also to see how the nature of the drawing changes once he starts to ink it. There's almost like two different looks, beyond the fact that one is obviously penciled and more sketchy and the other one is slicker. In a lot of cases, he kind of draws, for instance, like the hand here and some of the other parts of her clothing and anatomy are a little bit more angular and sharper in certain areas and edges. Whereas when he inks it, he's much more softer and rounder. And there are instances throughout the book where he inks his penciled preliminary drawings much more loyally, and then others where he takes a very, very different approach to the pencils. As far as I'm concerned, if you can draw dinosaurs and cars, you are a professional illustrator. You've made it. That's a really, really nicely drawn car and beautifully done dinosaurs. Another penciled piece, just beautiful. I will say I love his anatomy. There's something a little like squat and stout to his figures. They're a little bit shorter and a little bit more, I guess, thick, both the guys and the girls. It seems purposeful. They feel like they exist in their own world, almost like sculptural in a lot of ways. But the way he renders the figures and the clothing and all the accessories and the guns, it really feels three-dimensional. It feels like you could pick this up as a statue and turn it around and kind of look at it three-dimensionally. And I think that's an indication of an artist that has it worked out in their head three-dimensionally. So it's almost as though they're drawing from life, even when they're drawing from their imagination. Here's some world building. I'm not sure if this stuff was him being commissioned by perhaps a movie studio or an advertising company, or if this is all just his own storyboard work for something that he's working on, whether it be a comic or something like that. But these do look very much like storyboards for something that would later be filmed or animated. So this has a lot of like production work look to it, which leads me to say I don't know much about Mark Schultz and his like biography and what he does. If the bulk of his career is perhaps doing production art, or if it really all is comics and illustration. I would assume someone with his skill level has been sought out by companies and entities outside of just comic books. And for one reason or another, it doesn't seem like he's a very well-used artist in Marvel and DC comics anyway. So I would assume that he is working more as a production artist or some form of a commercial artist outside of the stuff that gets printed in books and his Xenozoic comic. But if you do know, let me know. Here's a really great example of preliminary to final. I love looking at these side by side once again. This preliminary is on the rougher side to some of his other ones. Some of his other ones really do feel like finished illustrations that can be, scanned and printed. This one, for his standards, is much more rough and sketchy, but all the information is there. It's really, really beautiful. All the lighting, the composition. And then, of course, it's cool to compare it to the final and see where he changed certain things. The female figure behind, what's happening in that background, some of the things he added, some of the things he took away. But he maintained that strong lighting scheme that he set up in the preliminary. And with the paint, you can see how he's just able to control those warms and cools throughout this painting. He's got a really, really strong handle on the oil paint. It's beautiful. And one of the things that I really admire about artists like him who are multidisciplinarian, if that's how you say it, create worlds and illustrations with just graphite, but then they can create beautiful pieces with pen and ink, and then they can make these amazing oil paintings, is that the ones that I really admire are the ones who are able to make it all look like it comes from the same world and the same artist's hand. They don't let the medium kind of take control of the style and the approach. They kind of bring whatever medium they're using, they bring it into their world. And here's another instance where we could compare side by side the preliminary to the final painting. And I could imagine where he would have obviously rendered and finished this one very different if he was using just pen and ink, particularly with the way he's handling the steam or the smoke that's coming off of the water here in the foreground in the penciled shot. And then, of course, the way he renders that with the oils, very, very soft and cloudy. It's also great to see how he handles all the musculature in this monster's anatomy over here. It makes me wonder how much reference he uses, or if he has models who pose for him, or what that process for him is like, because the anatomy is so accurate. All the backgrounds feel so realized and believable. I wonder what his process is when it comes to working with reference and getting the amount of accuracy he's able to get. Here's some more preliminary penciled work. This is the kind of stuff that might be my favorite. And this one right here in particular, how cool is that? I mean, and underneath it says that this was a preliminary for what was to be the cover of Xenozoic Tales number 15 that has yet to be produced. So this is something that was never even used and presumably abandoned at this stage, which is pretty incredible. Most of us, myself included, this might be our best piece right here. And this is something that he just sort of abandoned, which is pretty crazy. Really slick inking on this one. A little bit different, I think, from some of his other stuff. Bolder blacks, more solid blacks. Seems like usually even his darker areas are a little bit more washy. So this one stands out to be a little bit different in that regard. Much, much deeper, darker blacks. And then just little differences here, like noticing that the face is different in the preliminary as it is in the final, and you wonder why. I think it was an improvement in the final. Different poses for these background swimmers here. than there are in the final. Overall, I'd take this one though any day if I was to make that. I can't help but go back and forth and see where he made certain changes, where it might have improved it, and where I might even like the preliminary better. So this right here is the cover image, of course. Really great to see all that detail and thinking done just with pencil on paper, I'm assuming, and then how it translated to the final illustration. This is just a killer illustration, such a beautiful cover illustration as well. Very eye-catching, and compositionally it works really, really well as a cover. I will say though, there really is something so nice about this penciled preliminary version that I kind of lean more towards. It's splitting hairs though. They're both so incredible and sort of perfect in their own right. But again, it's just a testament to the fact that he's able to create really compelling images in all different kinds of ways, whether it's with graphite, finished ink, and even fully rendered oil paintings. And right here is a good example of how, I'm not sure how he's able to achieve this technique here with the brush. In a lot of ways, it looks like the hairs of the brushes split, and with each stroke, it's creating a double or triple line. And it's a really, really nice technique that sometimes happens accidentally when your brush is dry enough and just kind of splits on its own. But I'm not sure how he's able to control that and make that happen on purpose. But it's a really nice technique that he seems to use in a lot of his ink drawing pieces. Let me know in the comments, do you like the preliminary penciled stuff more than the finished final ink versions? Or are they both great in their own way? I'm usually led so much to the black and white, strong ink drawing stuff, but the way he's able to render these penciled sketches and preliminaries, as he calls them, which is insane, is just beautiful. I really love the way he uses the pencil, and it's inspiring to me to even perhaps try and get a bit of a softer look at times with some of my work. Looking at the comparison between the preliminary in this piece and the final inked version, it makes me wonder what kind of a brush he's using. It doesn't really say, at least I haven't seen the size that these pieces are, but it looks like he gets a really, really delicate line and quite a bit of dry brush effects as well. And from what I could assume, it looks like he's using a pretty delicate brush and either watered down ink or more of like a sepia toned ink. But I'd be curious to know what size brush he's using with a lot of these pieces and how he gets control over so much of that dry brush. I mentioned in a recent video, I'm not sure if that video is up at this point yet, but sometimes when you're looking intently at an artist's work, whether you're just looking deeply at it or you're trying to do a study of their work, you can sort of guess and get indications in certain areas as to how fast they move when creating the images, like how fast they ink or how slow they ink. And I could be wrong, but what I would get out of his work is that it's very, very deliberate, controlled, almost like meditative lines that he's putting down. I don't think he's flying through this stuff with the kinetic energy that the art itself gives off. Sometimes it can be misleading sometimes when certain art has a really strong energy to it and a boldness to the ink lines themselves. But then when you watch the artist in say like a process video actually make it seems like they're very, very slow and controlled with those lines. So sometimes it's my inclination to want to put down really fast lines to get some of that fast energy. And it's just interesting to see that different artists do it differently. But he is getting some really, really delicate lines. And it leads me to believe that he's very, very slow and controlled with the application. Like, here's a really great example. Look at those hair strands there on both her and him, and the way he's able to use and control the lighting to separate his hair from her. Really, really great. But those brush strands on the hair are so controlled and delicate. Really, really nicely done, and very, very different from the penciled version. So it's interesting to see how he takes his initial penciled idea, which indicates that it might be inked in a certain type of way, and then sometimes his final execution with the inks is very different than what the pencils might indicate. Here's a great side-by-side. Awesome lighting on this one in both the pencil and the ink. And I am curious as to whether these are separate pieces of art or if this was just what he inked on top of this. But there are some differences that you can pick out where he changed certain things. But he has just such great control over the black and white. The same way he's able to control the lights and the darks and the cools and the warms in a painting, he's able to control that with just black and white as well. And that's just something I'm always striving to get better at myself. And when I see pieces like this, I get even more inspired to try to control those lights and darks in my images. And the fact that you can push that stuff to a level that just makes really, really interesting, cool looking pieces. This is actually really cool to see I'm gonna zoom in here a little bit, just to see the progression from the creation of this piece. Looks like it was for a commission, and just to see how many different iterations he goes through in order to finally get at that finished piece. Definitely all seems like it was worth it in the end, that's for sure. There's a nice close-up of it. So cool. Two of the harder things to draw are water and clouds, in my opinion, and just because there's such elusive kind of textures. And Mark Schultz seems to be able to do both at a really, really high level. And this is a great example of some of his skill level when it comes to water, and also his ability to draw like underwater life and some of these underwater plants and coral reef and all that stuff. It's just beautiful. It's no surprise too, because a lot of these plants and reef and rocks are just great excuses to exercise his beautiful like line making and brush skills. This piece is also a really great example of him controlling that black and white once again. There's just a really great sense of control over the values. And if you squint your eyes, that becomes very, very prevalent. The lightest parts are this triangle shape in the foreground here that the composition creates. And it's all framed by this darker, more gray stuff in the background. And to some extent, you could kind of see him working that out in the preliminary version. But he really, really takes it to that next level in the final. This might be one of the best spreads in the book. Flesk was actually really cool, and they sent me quite a bit of extra goodies along with this order. So if anyone over there is watching, I very much appreciate that. Thanks so much. This is a beautiful book. You did a really fantastic job. I hope you enjoyed this video. This was a lot of fun to look through this really beautiful book. If this is your first time looking at the work of Mark Schultz, I hope you really liked what you saw. If you did, let me know in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed dissecting some of his work with me. Like I said throughout the video, there are certain things I don't really know about his process in terms of what tools he uses, how he goes about working with reference. If any of you have that kind of information, definitely let us all know in the comments below. It'd be cool to have a little conversation about Mark Schultz's work and some of his process. He's an artist whose work I really love and admire, but I don't really know too much about the rest of his resume and his biography. So it'd be cool to kind of find out a little bit more from some of you if you happen to know. I will say that the art of Mark Schultz, as well as Frank Frazetta and some other retro old school illustrators and comic artists, were really a big inspiration for me when creating the last two Stay Warm sketchbooks. I know I definitely had my Cenozoic book out when I was creating this latest one, just trying to evoke that classic adventure, fantasy, retro comic book feel and put that on the covers of these two sketchbooks. Beyond that, now after looking through a book like this, I definitely feel inspired to want to draw and play around with different applications, maybe attempt to try and create some illustrations and drawings that are finished with just pencil. I really like that graphite approach that he uses for his preliminaries and sketches. To me, those really do feel like finished illustrations, and that's like a style that I might want to play around with a little bit more. I love black and white ink drawing stuff, and I love to ink. So it'd be a little bit of a challenge for me to try and finish and fully realize something with just pencil. But looking at the way he does that is very inspiring to me, and it makes me want to play around with that approach in my own work. So like I mentioned, if you want to watch the extended version of this video where we look through a lot more of those pages, it's a really, really big book. I didn't want to show too much on this video, but if you want to see a whole bunch more, take a look at the extended version of this video. That's going to be on my Patreon. I'll leave the link in the description. Anyway, that's all I got for this episode. As always, thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.